2053. Across the globe, the occult threat grows ever more blatant, and strange, incomprehensible events multiply. As the Earth's surface resources dwindle, powerful corporations turn to the uncharted depths of the oceans, unaware of the ancient horror they are about to awaken. What is that ancient horror, you ask? Terrible key bindings and these shocking facial animations. Okay, yeah, I'm being snarky, but I did finish Cthulhu the Cosmic Abyss yesterday, and while this game does do some things really well, it also really falls flat in many areas, particularly in the horror. This is barely a horror game. Now, I was really interested in this one. I am somebody who I personally find the deep dark ocean to be both fascinating but also terrifying, and considering that in a lot of the Lovecraftian lore, the mythos of that world, most of the horror comes from our ocean. Most of the monsters live in our deep dark ocean. So knowing that this game was going to be exploring the ocean where they come from, I was very excited. But unfortunately, this game really doesn't do much with it. In fact, if you want my 2-word review of this game, it is wasted potential. Now I'm going to give my opinions, what I like about this game and what I dislike about it. If you want a non-spoiler review, if you just want to know whether the game is worth picking up, if you're looking for a horror game, absolutely not. Not even one bit. If you're looking for a game that is a puzzle and investigation game that doesn't hold your hand, even if you sometimes wish that it would, then maybe. This game is absolutely a puzzle game. You are going to be looking for items, searching for things, and sometimes that is going to be a struggle. You're going to be having to piece together things yourself, and you might like that. You might like that a lot. If you're somebody who likes yellow tape, if you're a yellow tape enjoyer, absolutely avoid this one like the plague, because not only is there absolutely no yellow tape here, but some things are so obnoxiously hidden that you might spend half an hour looking for it. If that sounds good to you, there you go. So let's get into the game and what I like and dislike about it. So Cthulhu the Cosmic Abyss, you start off as this guy called Noah. Now you are an investigator, you work for this company, but it doesn't really explain what your role is or what the company is in the game ever. The Steam description does, but the game doesn't. Now you and your partner Elsa, you come to this place because one of your co-workers, May, has seemingly gone rogue. She just completely stopped answering any of her phone calls, and so you are sent to find out what exactly is going on. Now immediately as I got here, I ran into my first big problem of the game, and that is the key bindings. Now I got off the boat and I couldn't move, and I thought this is a little bit strange. My character was kind of moving, but not when I was pressing WASD. I looked into the controls and yeah, these are the controls that they picked for movement. I don't know whether this was a bug or a deliberate choice. In fact, I'm going to give the game studio the benefit of the doubt and say that this was a bug, because if this was a choice, why? Why would you choose these for movement? I can't remember a modern game that hasn't used WASD for movement. Like what is the... Okay, you know what? Never mind. It was fine. I was like, that's weird, but I'll just rebind it. While I was there, I thought I'll rebind some other keys, like flashlight for an example, because for some reason, flashlight is on A. Yep, A. Okay, so obviously I needed that for movement, so I put it to F, like a normal human being. But I didn't realize, because the game doesn't tell you if you bind a key that is already bound, there's no indication. So I bound flashlight to F, not knowing that F was already bound to a bunch of other things. For example, using your items. So every time I used an item, I would turn the flashlight on or off. So that was, whatever, that was fine. I had to spend like 5 minutes going through the key bindings to fix them. Whatever, okay, cool. So I did that, and then I started my investigation with Elsa. Now you get to the house, and the house, it looks kind of like spooky. It looks like there's going to be some sort of horror here. And you break in, there's a couple of like creaks and windows rattling and stuff like that. And then the game introduces you to the core investigation mechanics. Now, there is one really cool mechanic here. This is the sonar mechanic. And what this does is when you find certain items throughout the game, for example, in this house, you can find these geological rocks. You can analyze them, which costs 1 energy. And once you've analyzed it, you can use your sonar to ping all items of that type around the area. Now, this is a key mechanic. You're going to be using it a ton, and it's actually used kind of well throughout the game. It's used in some really interesting ways. but this is how you're going to be finding items. So for example, you might find a particular rock that might not be that interesting, but pinging all the other rocks might lead you to a clue that you need to figure out the puzzle of the area. Now, every area has its own puzzles, and this is also the second big mechanic, is the vault mechanic. So every time you find a piece of information, whether that's relevant or not, it's all going to be added into your vault, and you can move these different clues, these different pieces of information around however you like. You can link them together, and every now and again, the game will ask you a question. Now, that question might be something as simple as, how do I open this door? And if you know the answer, if you figure it out, you can drag that piece of information to this and solve it. If you solve it, sometimes gives you a little bit more context. It sometimes even lets you progress. So this is all stuff you're going to be doing throughout the game quite regularly. Now, throughout the game, you have an AI companion. Now, this companion is a big part of the story, and there is like 2 different modes where one mode will let you ask the AI companion to help you with puzzles, and one mode doesn't. I use the mode that doesn't. I kind of regretted that by the end, but there we go. But this AI is with you the whole time, and it's kind of like a narrator to the story, and they will be important to the story towards the end, so we'll come back to that. So using all of these skills, you very quickly realize that something is going on here. Not only is May just completely missing, she left her phone upstairs, but there are a bunch of occult items around the house. There's also this massive weird mural on the wall, which looks very occulty, and then you go down into the basement and you find there is indeed a portal. Now, this portal is surrounded by all of this weird, living, biological, fleshy wall stuff, and you then have to go and figure out the puzzle to open the portal. Once you do that, you make your way through, and you are immediately launched into this other world that has this giant black sun, black hole kind of thing in the sky, clearly some sort of Cthulhu-related realm. And once you're in there, you actually find May, who has, surprise, surprise, gone crazy. Now, this is obviously a very Lovecraftian thing. Everyone goes crazy. That's absolutely fine. But she's gone crazy. She attacks you with a knife. She chops off some of your fingers. You manage to subdue her, but as you both try and leave, you get sucked through the portal, which closes before Elsa can leave. This is the basic setup of the game, and you might have noticed that so far, not much horror. That's okay. There never is. So then the game starts. This is sometime later. You now have some mechanical fingers for some reason. This is never once brought up. It never matters to the story. I'm not sure why they even bothered with this, but there we go. And you are now given your diving suit. Now, the game throws you pretty quickly into this. You are now going to investigate this underwater station. This station is owned by billionaire Andrew Marsh, and supposedly it was not long ago abandoned and everyone left, and it made the billionaire really sad and he's gone into hiding because of it. But obviously we know that's not going to be the case, right? So on our way down to this underwater station, we're still trying to figure out where Elsa is and what happened to Elsa. But on our way down to this underwater station, our little submersible machine thing crashes, because of course it does. Now, this is where I was super excited, because as soon as you leave this little vessel thing, you are free to swim around this area, and immediately this area is underwater. It's very dark, it's very silent, and it's very creepy. The atmosphere of this place was so good, and immediately I was thinking, what is down here? Right? You are shown this giant underwater cavern that's really big and it's really dark, and you have to rely on your sonar to ping to see where you're going. And I was like, I watched Iron Lung in the cinemas, and I was like, is this going to be like that, where you ping the sonar and there's going to be a monster and you're just going to see a glimpse of it and it's going to go away? Nope. Nope. In fact, there is absolutely nothing in this entire area. Nothing at all. The atmosphere was so good, but there are no monsters. There is no danger, no threat, nothing Lovecraftian in this area whatsoever. But okay, this is like the beginning of the game, so that's fine. You know, maybe it's a slow burn, like Alien Isolation or something. So speaking of Alien Isolation, it's very similar. You find the facility, it's very dark, it's very quiet, it's clearly abandoned, but as soon as you make your way inside, something just seems a little bit off. You go inside and things are all in disarray, the power is out, there are dead bodies all around, scratch marks, more of this strange fleshy substance that you found in the basement earlier. So it's clear something terrible happened here, and obviously the whole thing about it being abandoned by the billionaire was all just, you know, lies. So you get inside, and then you find a little recording of the billionaire who says that he's going to investigate this underwater city that they found. But inside this place that had all of this tension and atmosphere, Nothing happens. You have all of these dead people, you have all of this evidence of monsters, but there isn't a single monster down here. There is like one little spooky, like, oh, I just saw a guy that wasn't really there, but there is no enemies, no threat, no tension, no danger, nothing. Okay, so you make your way onto the next area, which is this weird underwater maze that this company was trying to make their way through. And immediately, again, stuff is a bit strange. Now, the game does this mechanic a lot, and I don't want to diminish it because it is cool, it is fun, but it does that whole thing where it's like, oh, you turn left through this corridor and you travel for a little bit, but then it brings you back to where you started. And yes, that's very Lovecraftian. They call it the non-Euclidean stuff, right? Okay, that's cool. This is stuff I've seen many, many times before. And considering that this is supposed to be a Lovecraftian mind-bending horror thriller, I've seen so many horror games do this. This is so cliche at this point. It's not really anything mind-bending. It's just, okay, more of that. Okay, cool. But fine, whatever. The maze is kind of cool. You're using your sonar ability and you've got to try and figure out which way to get through the maze. Now, this is where you have your first major choice. Throughout the game, you have several puzzles that you have to solve, and they will have two different ways of solving it. They have a good way and a bad way. And the good way will reduce your corruption, whereas the bad way will increase your corruption. And to get the best ending, which we'll talk about later, you have to end the game with less than maximum corruption. So the more times you do the bad ways, the more likely you are to get the bad ending. So here, for an example, you can either assemble the pillar, the ancient pillar, or you can figure out a different way to get through. I actually did the ancient pillar, which was the bad way. But you get through this area, and once again, there are evidence of monsters, but no monsters. So, okay, we move on to the next area, which is the temple. We finally make our way into the underwater city. Now, pretty much the rest of the game is just this underwater city temple areas, but whatever. You get into this area, and you find evidence of the company that Andrew Marsh was leading, and they're clearly trying to investigate this area. Or they were, because they're all dead. And once again, I saw a bunch of dead bodies, a bunch of blood. There was evidence of claws and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, here we go. We're going to have some monsters. We're going to have some threat. And then we finally find this guy who's still alive. And he's fused to this wall as some sort of ritual. And we're trying to get him down. And he goes, no, just leave me. It's all over. Just save yourself. The monster's around. And then the camera pans over to the side and you hear a roar. And I was like, yes, finally, here we go. Some danger. Nope. Once again, nope. No danger. Now, there is a monster in this area, okay? And the way that this works is you have to solve a puzzle to progress to the next area. But if you try to go to that next area before you finish the puzzle, you have to cross this big water area. And if you try and cross that big water area before you finish the puzzle, this deep one will come and kill you. This is the deep one you see in the Steam trailers and all of the Steam marketing, okay? Now, this is cool. There is a little cutscene where he kills you if you go through this pool, but once you've been killed once, you very quickly realize, oh, I can't cross this pool until I finish the puzzle. And once you realize that, you have no reason to go back into the pool. And if you don't go back into the pool, the monster just leaves you alone. It doesn't stalk you, it doesn't follow you, it doesn't chase you, it doesn't bother you at all. It just chills out in the pool and you can complete the puzzle at your own complete leisure. So realistically, all it is there for is to stop you progressing to the next area. There's no danger, no threat, no anything. Once you realize don't go into the pool, you can just carry on. It's not like you need to go into the pool to figure this puzzle. You don't need to. So you don't, and therefore the monster just never bothers you again. So anyway, you carry on doing the puzzle. Now, once again, there is a good way of doing this puzzle and a bad way of doing this puzzle. Either way you do it, you're going to go through yet another corridor where it's like, oh, you went through the corridor, but it brought you back out to the beginning again. You have to do that very cliche thing where you walk through the corridor, then turn around and walk back through the corridor. Because, you know, mind bending, right? There's also a pregnant woman here who is pregnant with a human hybrid monster baby, and she's still alive. But if you do the good puzzle like I did, the good solution, she just dies. And that's it. That's the end of that. No one really cares. Okay. But then finishing the puzzle gets rid of the monster. You move through to the next area. Now, there's like a few more areas, and then you finally get to this part where you find the big monster. Now, this was also shown in the Steam trailers. This is a terrifying eldritch abomination with many eyes and tentacles. Finally, we meet the Shoggoth. And what does the Shoggoth do? Prepare yourself. It stares at you menacingly. No, seriously, that's all it does. Now, there is like a little cutscene where it kills some random guy that we don't know, but not once does it threaten you. It doesn't bother you ever. In fact, I don't even think you can die to it. Not one time does this monster try and kill you. It just looks at you. Now, yes, you can die if you stand too close to it for like 30 seconds, but that's it. Otherwise, it's just there. It's just watching you. It doesn't really care. Like, okay. But fine, this monster is guarding the star. Now, along the way, we learn what the sort of main story of this game is. The main story of this game is Cthulhu is currently asleep. He was put to sleep by this ancient race called the Yith. Now, the Yith are really cool. They're this ancient race of beings who had really cool technology, but technology that we can't really understand. And they used to take people over with like a psychic link, and they would use their bodies. And they were the ones that locked Cthulhu away and put Cthulhu to sleep. Now, Andrew Marsh, who is obviously involved in a bunch of occult stuff, because everyone in this game is, he's trying to wake up Cthulhu, and the only way he can do that is by finding the lock to Cthulhu's prison and opening it. Now, this lock is called the Star of Shamash, and we also have to find it before he does so that we can make sure that Cthulhu doesn't wake up and everyone can go on living their mundane, crappy lives. Now, to solve this area and to get the Star of Shamash, you have to defeat this Shoggoth creature. Now, there are two ways you can solve this one, a good way and a bad way. The bad way involves you stabbing the creature, which kills it and then reveals all of its tentacles so you can climb it. You need to climb these tentacles to progress. And so now you can see them, you can climb them and get where you need to go. But the good part of this solution, which you're going to need to do if you want to get the good ending, involves you climbing those tentacles that you can't see. Now, you can kind of see them. If you look at the floor as you're walking, you can see this weird secretion from these tentacles, and it will show you where the secretion starts and ends. But to do this the good way, you have to just kind of inch slowly and hope you don't fall. This was so much fun. But yeah, this whole part was a bit odd, honestly. I should also mention, by the way, that throughout the game you have all of these upgrades that are also tied into the corruption. As I said earlier, to ping things that you're going to need to do a lot throughout this game, you need to do energy. And if you run out of energy, you can still analyze objects, but that will cost corruption, which again is bad if you want the good ending. So throughout the game, you get all of these upgrades. For example, there is an upgrade that makes every time you find a new clue, you have a chance to gain energy. And these are all great, but as you use them, as the corruption increases, their corruption also increases, and there's a chance that you might lose them forever, which this whole mechanic just feels so half-baked. Like, by the time you get to the end of the game, some of these you've only had for 5 minutes, and they're nothing amazing, nothing special, but you are going to need to use them if you want to get the good ending, because you won't have enough energy to analyze all of the objects that you need to analyze. So yeah, it's whatever, but you finally get through this area, and you then make your way onto the final puzzle area of the game. And I'm going to be honest, this part, it was kind of rough. Now, up until this point, there'd been barely any horror in this game, and by this part, they just stopped trying. This end part of the game, there is zero horror, not even like a hint of it. It is just purely story, exposition, and puzzles. And to be honest, these puzzles can get a little bit not even stressful. They get a little bit rough, okay? And I ended up using a guide to get through this part because it started to get just too much by the end of the game. But you go through this, you learn more about the Yith, you learn more about their intentions to keep Cthulhu locked away forever and all of this stuff, and then you get the Star of Shamash and you make your way through to the final area of the game where you finally come face to face with Cthulhu. Now, at first, he's just there in the stars. You just see his eyes, his red eyes looking down at you. Now, obviously, at this point, we've found Elsa. Elsa is still alive, and Elsa is now trying to help us finish this. We get to this area where we see these big Yith statues, and we find this item, which it's mentioned in the story. It's basically how the Yith locked Cthulhu away. You have to have a warden. The warden stabs themselves in the forehead, and they use their life energy to keep Cthulhu locked away. I think, not entirely sure, But you get here and the game's going to give you choices. Now, if your corruption is maxed by this point, you just can't get the good ending anyway. But if your corruption isn't maxed, you now have a choice. You either stab Elsa with this, or you can stab Key, your AI companion, with this, who's pretending to be Elsa right at the last second. Whatever. You stab one of them two, or you stab the box. Now, if you stab the box and your corruption is less than 100 or whatever, you get the good ending where everyone survives and everything's okay. If you stab Elsa, Elsa becomes the warden and you survive. If you stab Key, the AI, Cthulhu awakens and you will die. And that's it. That's the whole game. The Cosmic Abyss, the cosmic horror game with barely any cosmic horror in it. Now, I will say, if you go through the Steam description for this one, the game flip-flops on the term horror and thriller. And I don't know whether that means the studio wanted to make a thriller and added in horror later, or maybe they started with a horror game and decided they just couldn't do it, so they turned it to a thriller. But when the Steam description can't decide whether the game is a horror or a thriller, and the game has no horror, I do have to ask, why are you marketing it as a Lovecraftian horror? There's nothing scary about this game. Yes, I know, scary is subjective, everyone likes to say that, but this game doesn't try to be a horror. It doesn't try to do anything scary. If it did, it would have monsters trying to kill you. Puppy Playtime can figure out some scripted chases, so there's no excuse for these devs not to be able to do that. So I'm fine with the game. If the game wants to be a thriller, that's fine, but why market it as a horror? Even the graphics for this game show this as like this horror with the big Cthulhu monster in the background watching you. There's nothing like that in the game. The trailers for the game, all the screenshots show this monster that is literally just a cutscene. So for me, the horror of this game just falls flat completely. It fails to be a horror game, which, yes, I know I've played a lot of horror games. So it's not like I get scared easily, but I do appreciate when games try, and this game barely tried. Now, the investigation side of things, it was pretty good. I will say, sorry, in case you can't tell, I have a cold right now, but I will say that the investigation stuff, it absolutely does not hold your hand. I know there's a lot of discourse at the moment about games using yellow paint, Resident Evil being the main guilty party for that one. But in the world where games will signpost where you need to go with big flashing lights and arrow signs saying, come over here, the solution's over here, this is the way you need to go, I do appreciate a game that doesn't do that. I appreciate that this game is like an old school game where it's entirely possible for you to get completely stumped. And in fact, I did get completely stumped several times in this game. One of those times was because I missed one little item that as you come up a staircase, it's to the right of the staircase, but it's right where that big monster is, the big Shoggoth. So I was distracted by the Shoggoth. I missed the one little item and spent the next 30 to 45 minutes walking around going, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? I then went back to the start of the area, found that item and went, I guess I needed this. So on the one hand, I'm okay with that. I am okay with games, being difficult in terms of their puzzles and investigation, but not everybody is. There's an obvious reason why games like Resident Evil use the yellow paint. So I don't know, if you like that kind of thing, you might like this, but even for someone like me who does like that, the end of the game, the final puzzle with the star with all the symbols, it did get a little bit obnoxious and I wasn't really a huge fan, so much so that I ended up just using a walkthrough for the final puzzle, and I'm glad I did. Honestly, I'm glad I did. So yeah, those are my opinions on Cthulhu the Cosmic Abyss. It's a shame that they had all of this tension, all of this atmosphere, or this perfect location to do deep sea cosmic horror, and they did nothing. They did nothing with it, but there we go. That's my review. Let me know, have you played this one? Are you gonna play it? Probably not, but are you gonna play it? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about this one. But yeah, I hope you're enjoying the variety on the channel lately, because I know that I am. I'm going to be continuing to do variety on the channel for the foreseeable future. So yeah, screw you, YouTube algorithm. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.